Hello, I'm Kristin Tjornehoj from the University of Wisconsin-River Falls, where I conduct the St. Croix Valley Symphony Orchestra, the Symphony Band, St. Croix Valley Community Band, and teach related courses. It's a pleasure to have you joining us for this interview today. We are celebrating the 47th year, the longest running, continuous running commission composer project in the United States here at University of Wisconsin-River Falls. Our 47th composer is Fang Mang. Her English name is Mandy. She hails from China, and we welcome you to the University of Wisconsin.
Thank you.
It is a treat to have you here, and the commission that you have written is a composition that will involve many of our students, like the Commission Composer Project does. It's really interesting that a lot of our alumni, especially in the music department, celebrate this week as the uniqueness that we offer here from the university as far as arts and creating a new work, nurturing a new composer, a new composition, and we own it. It's a lovely thing. It goes from the composer to us as the musicians. We share it with the world, and then it becomes, again, a life of its own. So thank you for accepting this opportunity to be the commission composer for the 47th year.
Thank you so much for commissioning me. Yeah, it was a very big pleasure for me to write this piece. And I was hoping to write a piano concerto for years, and finally got this opportunity to do it. So thank you for the commission. Yeah.
Well, what's so interesting about living and breathing and changing and being an international person, as you are, is that you see such a spectrum of the whole world. And we all know the book, The World is Flat, and we all know that we're being influenced, especially with our electronics and our media, so that the world comes to us. But you have truly had the opportunity to live and work all over the world. You hail from Korea. So as a child, you hail from China.
Yes.
Yeah, I had a Korean guest yesterday.
I see.
I apologize.
We're not too far.
Wait, I know, you're right across the water there. I had two cellists from Korea here yesterday.
Yeah.
So you hail from China. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing in China and piano playing and how you kind of got into this composer world.
I was trained as a pianist. And I started to learn the piano from 5-6 years old, and then I very much want to be a professional pianist. So I went to the Guangzhou Conservatory of Music when I was 12 as a pianist. But the thing is, my hand didn't grow big, and we were required to play like least etudes, which I can't reach the ninth. So very small hand.
Okay, so then they said to you, yeah, because you do have to be able to reach a ninth or a tenth.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So then my teacher suggested me to maybe change the major. So I made the decision. My parents actually made the decision for me to switch to composition. I didn't like it until I went to Central Conservatory of Music in Beijing and started to discover the exciting world of composers. So, and then I began to love composing. Afterwards.
It's really interesting because, you know, in your culture, your parents made that decision for you, and it was like, okay, well, you're going to be a musician. Well, that's not working out, so we'll turn this way. And then all of a sudden, you then grew into it. They saw something in you. Were they musicians themselves?
My dad was a tenor, but then it's just also in the past, musicians are not considered like a very respected kind of field for musicians. So my grandparents asked my dad not to be a musician, so he changed it to engineer eventually, but he loves music, so we have 4 girls, and I'm the youngest one, and he wanted at least one of us to be a musician, and fortunately my oldest sister and me, we are both musicians. So my older sister, she's a soprano, and I'm a composer. So he's very happy with the result.
Well, that's wonderful. That shows you that he had the heart
Yes.
and he wanted to make a difference, and
Yes.
he respected the arts enough to encourage his
Yes.
girls to do
Mhm.
that. That's fascinating. And for four of you, for 2 out of 4, that's pretty good.
Yes, yes.
And,
He
and
succeed.
yeah, you were successful. And do your other sisters still live in China?
Actually, we all live in different places. So, my older sister, she lives in Australia, Sydney, and second sister live in Thailand, and younger sister, third sister, she lives in Hong Kong, which is actually part of China, but a little bit different. Yeah.
Yes, it is a little different,
From
isn't
the
it?
mainland.
Yes,
Yeah.
almost its own
Yeah.
place. Fascinating, fascinating world. So did the girls ever get together?
Very hard. I
Yeah.
haven't seen my second sister for 12 years, actually. It's just very hard for us to get together because when we have the break here, um, I can go, but they are busy. For the Chinese New Year, it's usually in middle of February, and I'm busy here
Yeah.
teaching or studying. So
It doesn't work in our academic calendar, does it?
no, it's
Yeah, I know.
different.
When you are in academia,
Yeah.
you get the summer times, you can get away, but during the school year, it's very, very
Very
difficult, isn't
difficult,
it?
yeah. I'm very busy, actually.
Lots of responsibilities.
Yeah. Mm.
So you've had quite a bit of opportunity to study abroad. So could you tell us a little bit about your work with IRCAM in France?
Okay. Um, Actually, I was chosen in 2006 to go to IRCAM. It's an electronic music, computer music center, and very famous because it was one of the most advanced place for computer music and composition, and who actually Pierre Boulez
Yes.
was the founder,
Yes.
and is part of the Centre Pompidou. So I was chosen to go there as one of the 10 young composers. So and then I went there and studied between 2006 to 7. I spent a year in Paris, and it was a very intensive program. We have classes in the first half, 6 months. We have classes every day from 10 to 6, and projects one after the other. I was just talking to Patty. I worked so hard, and sometimes 3 days no sleep, and there's like showers in IRCAM, and people are so used to work that hard. So it was very hard for me, but I felt like I survived that environment, and then I can do anything after that. I do feel like after IRCAM, it gave me the opportunity to see a lot of things and think very differently. Also, I can work like 10 hours straight after that. Before that, I was kind of lazy sometimes. But after that experience, I work harder. Yeah.
How many composers were going through that experience with you?
10 composers together.
So it's 10 composers, and it's a 1-year commitment.
Yes, 1 year, yeah.
And when you were saying that you were working, day and night, were you also assigned and only had so much time with computer and with some of the opportunities and some of the programs? Was it the programming that sort of created that frenzy that this is what time I get to use the computer?
Yeah, yeah.
Is that right?
Yes. The thing is, because we are musicians, right? We are not trained, very deeply, that in depth in mathematics, in science like mathematics, computer science, physics. But the teachers we had, they are scientists, so they try to teach us what's behind the softwares. That was the hard part for us. Especially, I'm not very good in math and other science. But it was a lot of fun to see the connections between science and music. And also we have project one after the other. So every time we learn something, we need to use that software to create the music. And so that was very interesting. And
Sounds fascinating.
yeah.
Now, out of that, you came a fascination with water, which you may have had before you went to this experience.
Yes, yes.
But you started to learn how to manipulate water and to make sounds and to use sheets of paper to create manipulated sounds and
Right,
do
right.
surround sounding and all of the technological things that we have really basically in our movies.
Yes, yes, yes. Actually, movie, um, I really like a movie, like film music. Like you have the story, um, you can really create a lot of things. That's an art form that's most closely to life. Actually, I feel like electronic music, in a way, helped us to kind of reach that, because I think music usually sometimes it's a very abstract form, like than painting or other art forms. So that's why.
And so your music uses traditional instruments, often since this experience, with manipulated tape or electronic. Can you explain a little bit about what we're going to hear and how you've used the variety of stacked speakers? Perhaps talk about Dudamel and the experience with Los Angeles.
Oh, not Dudama. It's Esapeka Salon.
Oh, Esapeka Salon.
Yes,
Okay, all right.
yeah.
Would you explain that a little bit?
Yes. Actually, I just so I'm not actually very good in electronic music. I just learned for 1 year, but I try to use that as a tool to create what's in my mind. So technique part, I'm still not very good, but I think what's in my mind musically, I can reach and create more sound than just use the traditional instruments.
So you do a lot of
Acoustic
layering.
instruments. Yes.
You use the
Yes.
techniques of layering in your composition. You use a form. You use structures. You use tonality. Tell us more. Explain a little bit more.
Yes. I can use the commission piece
Yes,
from,
please use the commission
from
piece,
Los
the concerto.
Angeles Philharmonic or the clarinet concerto as an example. For example, for the Deluge, that piece was inspired by Kandinsky's painting with the same name. The idea was to create this environment where the audience sitting inside a water cube, and the water sound with some processing, a lot of processing surround the audience, while the acoustic instrument on the front, on stage, they play at the same time and create like sparkling sound, either bright or dark, and colorful sound that was inspired by the painting. I tried to create this image of Deluge. For the other piece, the Resurrection for clarinet and the electronics, I actually was inspired by a story come from Peking Opera. So I tried to use the clarinet, this acoustic instrument, but use electronics to imitate the human voice. So we had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun working with my friend Derek Bermel, who's a clarinetist, also a composer. Together we worked a lot of hours together to try to get that happen. And so that kind of approach I really like, because if we just without electronics, it's very hard for clarinet to realize human voice.
Correct.
Or to create a kind of very thick sound, like I want to create this wild underground creature sound, which I actually used real sound from the tiger and the lion and processes them to create this very kind of scary background, which it's impossible to do with only acoustic
Traditional
instrument.
acoustic
Yeah.
instrument. That's
So,
fascinating because
yeah.
you use a lot of imagery, you like stories, and you like color. So
Yes.
tell us about your fascination with color and how it's involved titles.
Uh-huh.
And
Yes.
of course, you've already mentioned paintings,
Yes.
so the related arts. So talk
Yes.
about colors, pure white.
Yes. So actually, in my earlier, my student years, I wrote a series of color pieces, and it's usually based on one color. For example, my earlier piece, like Big Red, Pure White, you will hear in our concert on Thursday, are like based on inspired by one color. So like Pure White was an image of like a very quiet lake and under the moon, so that's another thing. It's nature. It's very inspiring to me. Um, and then I wrote other pieces like aqua, like my inspiration from the ocean waves and the blue color, light blue color, and also noir, black. You heard the orchestra piece.
I did.
I tried to create the sense of the interpretation of black from different culture, like from European, from Asia, from American, jazz music. So
Yeah,
it
that
was,
fascinates me because
yeah.
your comment right there is that intercultural uh,
Yes.
world of how does somebody see black in China versus black in Paris versus black in the United States or the United Kingdom. And so your experience from travel has caused you to bring some of those hues together. Now
Yeah.
you call that a roughly ABC form,
Yes, yeah.
which means section, section, section. And I find that interesting about your music. But let's go on a little bit farther with black in different cultures. What does black look like in China to you in your image?
I feel like for Asian people, we kind of, there's this sadness always in our culture and in how we see things. Also in our music, like folk music, you see Chinese folk music, there's always this sadness. And sometimes a lot of folk songs, very crying kind of sound, voice. So, and quiet. But there's the intensity from that quietness. That's what I see in black, in Asian culture, and uh, depth and sadness. But in American culture, when I see black, I immediately connect to American jazz music.
Okay.
So you can hear actually in that piece a lot of jazz melodies and rhythms. And the European culture, like when I remember I walked into a museum once where they have this exhibition of different paintings from different culture. There are three halls, one from Germany, Russia, France, but mostly very serious paintings. So you see the colors are very dark. And then there's this exhibition in the middle. It's American paintings, very bright and very relaxed. And then these Asian, like Japanese and Chinese paintings, also very dark, but very light dark. So it was very fascinating to me when I was a student to see the differences from the paintings. And I try to, because music is such an abstract form, it's very hard to do it, to try to very precisely describe things. So that's what I was trying to do. But later I think that was like almost 10 years ago when I was interested in single color. After that, I feel like I was ready to write pieces that reflect multiple colors and in paintings. So that's why I composed the pieces based on Kandinsky's painting, because very colorful paintings.
So you've
Yeah.
been in the United States a long time, and it's obviously
Yeah.
influencing you.
12
because
years.
12
Yeah.
years, you're doing lots of colors. So you came
Yeah.
over here to study? Did you come
Yes.
over here to study, and then you are actually going to become a U.S. citizen?
Yes, yes.
So tell us a little bit about why we've talked about black and the difference and a little bit of sadness in China. And I'm guessing that you're finding that you have a freedom here. Can you talk a little bit about maybe the difference and why you would want to become a U.S. citizen?
Um, I think this is more like I've living here for 12 years, and in these 12 years, I've very not going back home that often. So whenever I went back 3 times in the past 12 years, and I felt like kind of very far from my home country now. And the it's very interesting. When I was in China as a child and students, I completely reject everything. Like in Chinese music, for example, I only listened to some Peking opera, but I didn't like it. I was trained as a Western musician, played Chopin, Mozart, everything Western. But after I came here, after the more years I live here, actually, I feel like I'm more interested in my own culture. But the reason I want to be an American citizen is I feel in this country, I kind of feel like embrace all the cultures. It's accepting everything rather than limited in one thing or the other. So that's why it's the more distant I feel from my home country, actually, this brings this closeness to my country.
And when you say that, you do
Yeah.
bring a closeness. In other words, your identity still is obviously you're from China.
Yeah.
And you use the influence of your father in your compositions, whether you're thinking of that, I think, or
Yeah.
not, because he was a singer and he loved the opera.
Yeah.
And so you were exposed to opera as a child. And that's one thing that parents really need to do, or grandparents. Because experiencing music live is really critical to how that becomes part of the fabric of your life. If you're one who all you do is take your kids to one form of entertainment, or it's only movies, and they really don't experience what it's like to express oneself, then we lose that sense of who are we? What is our sense of place? What is our sense of purpose? And I think if we could all become introspective and think about what do I celebrate from my childhood? What do I embrace now? What fills me up? What inspires me? What is my purpose? That's really, I think, our main goal of education.
Yeah.
And now you are also teaching a little bit.
Yes.
And so you want to tell us about your position and some of the places that you've taught. You're in South Carolina now.
Yes. I started teaching like in 2010, actually. First at Duke University, actually, as a visiting assistant professor there. And at the same time, I got the position at Bowden Wallace Conservative of Music in Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio. And that was, I was a composer in residence there. And I taught the theory, composition, and at Duke I taught graduate seminars, and in Lutoslavsky, this Polish composer, also Toru Takemitsu.
And so that's probably what really encouraged them to have you. So you gave lectures because that's what your dissertation was about.
Yes.
So you have an intrigue with the Polish composer.
Yes, I'm very in love with his music because his orchestra music is just so every piece, almost every piece touched me very deeply. That's why I like his music. For Toru Takemitsu, and his philosophy of ideas kind of very similar like what I like. He's very interested in nature, timbre, and his orchestra music is very beautiful. And I also love his writings. He wrote a book. So all these things I love. I feel very fortunate I have this opportunity to teach that class at the Duke and because the students are very smart, and so they are also inspiration for me. Yeah, and then I moved to South Carolina with my husband because he's a math professor. So I started teaching at the University of South Carolina since 2011. Yeah.
And you still are finding time to compose, and in fact, you're being honored with a Guggenheim. That is a very big award. Explain that, please.
Yes. Um, I I got a Guggenheim to write the opera I wanted to write. It's based on the life story of a pianist and the tragedy of his family. And as I felt like even I didn't suffer in the Cultural Revolution in the 60s, but I felt like he and his family suffered from that period, and it's still kind of forbidden, this topic, to be shown in art form in China. So I feel like I have the opportunity to write this opera, and I think it's very important for people to know about that 10 years of tragedy. And many people, especially creative people, like his father was a writer, and his parents' suicide because how they respected dignity, and they were humiliated very badly in that period. So I think I have the freedom to write that opera here, and that's very nice of the foundation to try to help me to do what I wanted to do for a long time.
Well, yes, and you're saying that you would not be able to do this in China. So
Yes.
the freedom is coming from an award that will be a financial stipend to allow you the opportunity, if you will, to dedicate your time.
Yes.
So how long will you think you'll spend on your composition, on your opera?
I think at least 3 years.
Yes.
Yeah. I just started on the opera because there's so much research I have to do before I started to write the first note. That's
Correct.
usually how I start work. I spend a lot of time doing research first, and then when I start to write, I almost have the idea of the overall piece. So I think that's also an inspiration from Lutoslavsky, how he tried to get the overall picture of a piece before he started to write it. Yeah.
One of the things you mentioned in one of our classes is that at one point when you were first starting your composition, you would take your pieces of paper and put them throughout the apartment so you could remember where you are, because you only have so much time to create, and it's such an energy and it's such an occupation, if you will, focus. How about how long does it take for you to produce, for instance, this concerto that we're going to hear at the University of Wisconsin River Falls, the premiere of the concerto? How long of a time frame did something like that take you?
For this piece and my recent composition, actually, I felt like the more pieces I compose, the faster I can write. So I started to think about the piece last year. Was it last year? Almost, yeah, last year when Patty contacted me for the commission.
Yes.
And then I worked on the piece the whole summer, and then I spent the most time on the piano part because that's the main part. And then I think I started to orchestrate the piece from September. So from last June, almost a year. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
people,
I'm not like just doing that piece alone, but I was writing 3 other pieces at the same time. So that's.
So when we hear your music, it's really advantageous to us to have the opportunity to work with you and to have you in on the rehearsals, and that's what makes this project so special. In other words, the students have all been working, and faculty, and then we put it together, but then we get your inspiration, we get your vision, we get your time, and you haven't heard it.
Yeah.
Because you don't listen to the electronic MIDI versions,
No,
correct? As a
no,
composer, you don't
no,
like that.
I don't like that.
And
Yeah.
so this will be a fresh, it's almost like a child. It's almost like giving, it's a birth, isn't it? It's a birth of a
Yes,
creation.
yeah.
And so how many minutes?
Total about 15 minutes. Yeah. Usually, from I do check the MIDI version, but I never listen, like how much time. It says about 14 minutes, but usually the live performance is longer. So I gave 15 minutes about that.
And we have some electronic, do we have some electronic?
No,
So
it's
this one's totally the
acoustic,
acoustic instruments.
Actually, I stopped doing much electronics nowadays because it just creates another layer of difficulty.
It does.
Yeah, so for example, the electronic pieces, I got actually less performance than my acoustic.
Yes,
Yeah,
but
pieces.
we will have the electronic pieces
Yes.
on the program, as
program,
well,
yes.
because the whole program will represent your music, your
Yes.
vision, and your journey. Because
Yes.
already in your young life, you've had almost really 3 stages of composition. Do you agree?
Yes, yes.
And now
yes.
we're going into an opera stage, which is the 4th stage.
Yes, yes, yes.
So it's your personal
Exactly.
journey. And as we listen to music, it's so interesting because, you know, when we think, okay, this is a Beethoven symphony, well, 1 is very different than 9. And if you really love music and you want to be intellectually stimulated, you need to research the composer, the time period, the economics, because the economics surrounding that situation, also the government, any of these things really make a difference on you as a
Yes,
person,
exactly.
don't they?
Exactly, yeah.
So as we have this freedom and you have this lovely award to just create and then, if you will, respect the past and the present and yet do something historically significant,
Right.
will your family come to the premiere of the opera, and where will the opera be?
I haven't started connecting to opera companies and see which one will be interested to do the opera, because I was a little bit afraid if there's an invitation for me to create. Sometimes, you know, when you have a commission, and you might get limited by something, you know, but. I think the good thing for Guggenheim is they just give you the freedom to do whatever you want. You say, I'm going to do the opera. Okay, you should do it. So that's what I was afraid to do, that to try to connect to opera company. But I was advised by a professional person. He suggests me to start the process now. So I will start doing that. Very soon, actually. Maybe Minnesota Opera, I will.
Maybe
try
Minnesota
to
Opera. There we
get
are. We're
in
very
contact
nice
with
up
them.
here. We
Yes,
are very
yes.
nice, and we've got lots of contacts over there. And
Yes.
they would probably welcome that opportunity.
Yes.
So thank you for considering us up here.
Because I heard a lot of good things about the Minnesota
Yes.
Opera. Yeah.
Yes.
And the topic, I think, is very interesting also. It tells us how important freedom to a person, and how it actually changed a person's life. For example, this pianist I'm writing, his name is Fu Cong, and he lives in London. And I think his family tragedy actually changed his life. And these small things we see every day, but we might not notice. But opera is such a great form. It combines everything together and tells the story, and people learn, hopefully, from that story.
Well, and I really respect the idea that you're going to speak about freedom, because so many people take it for granted, and that's why I value our international guests so much, because you embrace the opportunities to be who you are going to be, and I love that you want to be a part of the United States community And yet, again, sometimes our young people, sometimes our old people, I mean, we take it for granted that we really can do what we want to do and achieve and learn and read any book and grow for the rest of our lives. So I appreciate that you would tell that story because the government isn't going to want to hear that in China. No.
Yeah. And I hope we'll have the same freedom here in the United States forever. So I hope this won't change. Yeah.
So do I. And all of us have to be cognizant and appreciative
That's why
of that.
it's important to not, I mean, I hope it will be performed, my opera, in China too, and also here, first here and then in China.
Well, that would be fascinating.
Yeah.
That would be wonderful. That would be a gift
Yeah.
to all of those people who've lived through it or had loved ones through that time. And as you talk about compositions, and you've been inspired by water and color and nature, stories, you really are a Renaissance woman who reflects the world.
Yeah, I love everything. It's just very easy. I get interested in some topic, and so I think I don't know. I don't know if you see this movie, La Vie de Rose.
No, I have not seen that yet.
It won the Oscar a couple of years ago about the French singer, and her life so fascinating, like it's tragic of her life. But when the interviewer interviewed her and asked her what you most what you want to say, and he said, love, love, and love. We need to love everything and see the love in our lives that really make our life better. Yeah.
That's a lovely, lovely way to think about it.
Yeah.
So as we think about your music, what kind of adjectives or descriptions would you have for the concerto that you're going to leave as a gift to the University of Wisconsin River Falls?
This piece is very special to me because as a pianist, I was very afraid to write for my instrument. So I had the opportunity to write this piano concerto. So I want to say this piece is a kind of milestone in my career sometime that I can finally write a piece for my own instrument. So it's very special to me, and so I think I feel very grateful to the university to commission this piece, and finally I can do a piano concerto that I wanted to do for years.
And it will express you, and also perhaps some frustration of not realizing that total career as a pianist. So I understand it's kind of a big block to jump over.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I was very upset actually when I had to change to composition major from piano major. But sometimes after many experience, I mean, living in different places, I realize sometimes a bad thing becomes a better later. So that's why I think for young people, don't be too upset if you see something not was your original liking or will at the beginning. It might turn to a better thing for your life.
It does, really, if you let it.
Yes, yes.
If you open that and embrace those opportunities.
Open our mind.
Right.
It's very important. Yeah.
And you've done a great job of that, and you will open our minds and you will expand our horizons here at the university. And that's why we're at universities, because the purpose, I think, is to embrace education, thoughts, cross-cultural, to make the world a better place. And why not enjoy it as we do it?
Yes,
it's a great thing to embrace, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, it has been a pleasure to have you here on campus.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing, and good luck with your career.
Thank you.